Hello, welcome back. I'm Jay Owens, author of Customer Servitude. I didn't bring my book with me today. And I'm back with another live video to talk about the themes in the book and to answer the questions and the comments that were left since the last video. I know I'm a week behind thanks to a weird throat thing last week, but that's the beauty of doing this bi-weekly, I guess. So we'll be back on track next week. And anyway, with the extra week, we had some good comments and stuff, so thank you for sending those and posting those, and keep them coming. So one thing I wanted to talk about after my little introduction last time was power structures, because that's really the underlying topic in the book overall. Customer service employees are really never in a position of power in any interaction. Customer to employee, the customer has the power because they're the one spending the money. Employer to employee, the employer has the power because of the employment agreement. So, like I said last time, to right the wrongs, you have to put some of the power back into the hands of employees. But I wanted to talk about a different aspect of these power dynamics, because the point of the book isn't just how customer service work is oppressive in general. It's how it's more oppressive to employees who are already subject to power differentials in society. So I mentioned last time that I'm gay, and this has been an issue in my career because, as everyone can probably predict, not all customers are super cool with it. It's gotten better. It's gotten a lot better, but for a long time, I knew that anytime my sexual orientation was revealed to a customer, it could result in losing my job. The power dynamic inherent to all the jobs put me in the position where it becomes my responsibility to placate those with power over me. And customers hold power over employees because they can cause negative things to happen if they're not happy. So keeping them happy becomes part of the job, and that means keeping myself secret becomes part of the job. So there's that power differential that exists because companies give customers power over employees, and then there's the power differential that exists because society gives straight people power over gay people. They don't exist separately. They magnify each other and they kind of compound each other. So, and that's kind of the whole concept of intersectionality and why that's important. So for a long time, I went to great lengths to be closeted at work. When people asked what my boyfriend or husband did, I just talked about my wife using male pronouns. And when I referenced her in small talk or conversations, I would refer to her as my roommate or my friend. And so what I thought I was doing was protecting myself. It was demeaning and depressing and tiring, but it served a purpose in my mind for a really long time. And then I decided I was married, and it was stupid to pretend that I wasn't. So I started being more and more out about things. And the world didn't end. Nobody boycotted my store. Torch-wielding mobs didn't show up. But what did happen was that my customers sort of filed me away in their heads in the little column marked good gay people, which is, different from bad gay people who fit all of the negative stereotype, whatever those are now. I'm going to guess pedophilia is in there somewhere or something. I don't know. I never got my gay agenda, so I don't know what we're supposed to be doing evil in the world. But obviously, if they liked me and did business at my workplace every day, and I didn't set off all sorts of weird gaydar alarms with them, then I was one of the good ones. Rather than question whether their stereotypes in their heads were relevant, or to re-examine those, they just amended them. It became a little asterisk. Like, oh, she's great, she keeps a clean store, and she's really nice, she's not so bad. Too bad not all of them were like that. So, because what I had done was I submitted. I was submissive. That's what customer service jobs ask of us. And, if we want to succeed, we have to give customers and employers what they ask for. And for from us, they ask a lot. For employees who aren't straight, white, cisgender, able-bodied people, it means behaving in ways which don't bother customers who are all of those things. It means being a certain type of person at work. And so here's the point of all this. The power structure of customer service enables classism. It puts people who have money to spend or money to pay in wages in a position of power over those who need that money the most. And because of that power structure, the working poor are coerced into behaving and appearing certain ways. So the more they look and act like they're happy and stress-free and like they have no trouble getting medical or dental care or washing their clothes or finding transportation, the less poor they look, the more successful they will be in customer service. In fact, if they don't maintain that illusion, they might not even get hired. And the reality is that these jobs often don't provide adequate income to live on, but the illusion seen by customers is that the people with even these low-paying jobs are doing just fine because they're required to look that way. If those other poor people would just get jobs like these people, they'd be fine too, right? But the same dynamic enables hate. So minority employees are also coerced into behaving and appearing a certain way to convince non-minority customers that they aren't the bad type of minority. The more gay people stay in the closet, the more people of color tailor their appearance and expression to be more white, the less obvious it is that a person is different in some way, the more successful they'll be in customer service. And in fact, those who don't do those things might not even get hired. So what the customer sees are representatives of minority groups who successfully submit to the demands of the majority and therefore get filed away as good minorities. And the illusion seen by customers that plays into this idea that minority employees, these are people who defy those stereotypes and they seem really happy to do it, right? Because we're paid to be happy in customer service. That's part of the job requirement. So submit and act happy about it. So if you think about how deep bigotry runs in our society and then think about how many times a day people go shopping or out to eat or hire people to do necessary services and encounter these sort of cheerful illusions that reinforce the idea that good minorities, good poor people are submissive and helpful and, happy about it. What does that do to combat the bigotry? Nothing at all. It doesn't. It actually just reinforces it. So customer service culture in America perpetuates racism. It's part of the framework that holds it in place in our society. It's the same with sexism and classism and homophobia and all of the other long list of types of bigotry. It isn't just an oppressive job because of bigotry. It is part of the machinery of it because it's such an oppressive situation. So think about that. Talk about that with people. So, like I said, there were some actually good questions and comments left on posts and stuff in the last, 3 weeks. I posted a prompt, not this past Monday, but the one before. Actually, I post a prompt every Monday. If you follow the page, it's a giveaway thing. So if you answer the question and share it, you could win a free copy of the ebook. So there's that. And 2 weeks ago, it was asking if you've ever felt discriminated against in the hiring process. And if you did, if you have, what you did about it. And I'd still encourage you to go find that prompt and comment, add to the discussion. But I did get a few comments, which were kind of disappointing in a way, but also totally indicative of how things play out in reality. The consensus was basically that, yeah, this happens and it sucks and I don't want to work for that kind of person anyway, so I just don't think about it that much and just move on and find something else. And I have to say I find that really troubling. I know that that's kind of the prevailing approach but it's still really troubling, and here's why. First of all, it means that this is really pretty commonplace. Not at all unusual. Kind of like I talked about last week, where if you learn to deal with acute instances of discrimination or harassment, the rest of the systemic problem is more easily ignored. You can just kind of focus on the acute ones and not dig deeper into the problem. So yeah, hey, if you can just move on from being discriminated against and at an interview and find something else, then why think about the repercussions for everyone else who interviews for that job after you? It's not you anymore. It's not your problem, right? But aside from that, it also reflects the reality that there are really not a lot of avenues for standing up to that stuff. Reporting isn't easy. Workers are at a disadvantage, and don't have a lot of power to fight back against discrimination at work anyway, much less when that's not actually their workplace. They never did get the job. But what really struck me and really bothered me, and I think it got called out on the page as well, was that if I'm not mistaken, all of the people who commented with that I just moved on, I didn't think about it, were white guys. So least likely to be systemically discriminated against. And by that, I don't mean that they don't ever experience discrimination, but they're less likely to face a situation where an interviewer harbors a bias against white guys in general. They're not going to have people go like, well, you're really well spoken for a white guy. Or think like, man, the last white guy I hired didn't work out, so I don't know about this one. Which is reality for everyone else except for white dudes. So it's easier then as a white guy to minimize that experience when you're not living under that expectation or the experience that you're going to run up against that same negative judgment at probably every job interview, every opportunity that comes your way. Then it's really a lot easier to say, well, it's that one guy, it's because of this one thing, that interviewer is a bad person, and then be like, screw him. I'll go work for somebody else. You can look at those experiences as the exception rather than the expectation. And I mean, beyond that, there are places and contexts where discrimination in employment happens, and then there aren't other options afterward for that applicant, where you can't just move on and find something else. There may not be something else to move on to. Maybe where the job market isn't so robust. For instance, smaller towns or during economic downturns, when jobs just aren't as available. And that discrimination has a much bigger impact in those cases. And actually, I think, one of the commenters said that after he was discriminated against, he went a whole year without a job. And I don't know, I consider that a big deal. I would consider that a huge deal. But I think that what it demonstrates is the extent to which we've normalized some of this stuff as a culture. And the extent to which there are just not a lot of other ways to cope with these things and get past these things as individuals, because there's no sort of system for reporting and getting justice. It's a coping mechanism to view what's actually a really huge systemic problem as something isolated or inconsequential or something that you can kind of just rise above as a person. It's a personal problem. It doesn't do anything to change the system when you do that. But it does allow an individual to be able to sort of separate themselves from it. So, and of course, that's also what allows these systems to remain in existence. So if we advise everyone to just get over it and just move on, then the problem doesn't have to be addressed. We've reframed it so that if you're me sitting here writing books about it and poking at the issue and talking about it all the time, it becomes a matter of like, well, she's obviously obsessed and taking it personally or whatever. And you can sort of write me off instead of paying attention to the issue. So if we operate under this idea that the best thing to do is just dismiss discriminatory behavior and move on, then anyone who doesn't dismiss it and doesn't move on faces judgment rather than the people actually doing the discriminating. So there's systemic bias for you. That's how bigotry works. And that's how it remains so deeply embedded in our culture, and that's the impact becomes so normalized. And people are so conditioned to blame the people who raise their voices about it, that's how that machinery works. So, I mean, kind of that's the whole book. Not really. There's a ton more in there. But, so another question, well, I guess not so much a question, but a comment that was left. Actually, it wasn't even left on the page. Somebody emailed it to me. Somebody I know in real life. They wanted to tell me about a situation that illustrated some of the points in the book in their own workplace. And I get a lot of that, actually, and I love these. So if you have some, once you read the book, if you think of things that you've seen or experienced in the workplace that illustrate this stuff, drop me a message. Anyway, it was a situation where workers were contracted to do a job. The company that this person worked for had contracted a different firm to do a job there, and that second company, the contracted company, hired workers then to complete the job, and there were complaints that one of those workers was sexually harassing women who worked for the larger company, the one who'd hired the contractors. And so it was a bid situation, so the contractor that they hired was the lowest bid. So these workers, the ones that were accused of harassment, aren't making a lot of money. Like, as a lowest bid thing, their employer had literally agreed to pay less than everyone else to get that job done. They were literally there because their employer agreed to pay them very little. So even though there were a lot of complaints about this harassment, the argument against firing the employee that was being complained about, or to, even cut the contract, was that the bid was so low that they wouldn't be able to find anybody else to do the job. So the argument was that to keep the harasser on, to keep him employed, to keep him in that situation, because no one else would do that job for that amount of money. So basically the message was that cheap labor is more important than the safety of the women who worked in that workplace. And that's really the kind of dynamic at work in a lot of places and a lot of employers, unfortunately. A lot of decision-making goes like that. The monetary expense of dealing with harassment and abuse and those problems is far more important to a company than the impact of the workers, on the workers, because that personal toll, the emotional toll, the complaints, the impact to morale, all of that, it's not a line item on the budget. It doesn't show up in numbers. So if it doesn't show up in the numbers, it doesn't matter. That's why we have to show up in numbers. That's a good one. I should put that on a t-shirt. So that's really all I have for today. I'll be back in another 1 week, since we're a week behind, with another live feed. And between now and then, I'll have some discussion prompts and stuff on the Facebook page and on the Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I think it's at CUST_service, because it's too many letters to spell out customer service. Servitude. Oh, it's servitude, yes. Also, if you're on Goodreads, stick customer servitude on your want to read list. And if you've got the book, if you've read it, please take a moment to go on Amazon, stick a review, good or bad. Those are two things that would be greatly appreciated. And thank you again for watching. We'll see you next week.